My wife betrayed me before the wedding. Her mother demanded acceptance, but I chose epic revenge. I didn't expect betrayal to arrive in plain text at 12:14 a.m. But that's when Claire wrote 3 words that turned the room colder than the ocean outside our window. Don't marry her. No emoji, no soft landing. Just a small detonation on a bright screen. I was counting down 3 weeks to the wedding like a kid scratching lines into a summer door frame. The rehearsal dinner menu was finalized, the photographer's deposit had cleared, and the tux shop had pinned me into a version of myself that knew what to do with satin buttons. Rachel had fallen asleep in the next room after scrolling through flower arches until her thumb surrendered. I stared at Claire's message until my phone politely offered to silence people who send earthquakes. Claire and I were not friends. We were the kind of uneasy acquaintanceships that grow in the shadow of a best friend you're supposed to tolerate. We'd survived too many polite brunches where everything tasted like diplomacy. She'd never liked me enough to pretend. I called her anyway. She picked up on the first ring as if she'd been holding her breath beside the phone. Don't marry her, she repeated, this time with air behind it, like she'd just surfaced. The Bachelorette, she said, and somehow the word felt heavier than it should. Portland. Dim lights. She left with one of the dancers. The bench I sat on might as well have become a courtroom pew. Claire met me an hour later at the park above the marina where the gulls practice theft. She handed me her phone with the carefulness people reserve for newborns and explosives. Screenshots, timestamps, a hotel charge posted 20 minutes after the club closed, and a cropped selfie the next morning captioned, "I needed that," sent to a contact saved only as A. I did not ask who A was. I am a software engineer. I can follow strings when I want to. But in that moment, I was a man counting how many bones hold a heart in place. I told her to tell you, Claire said, jaw set. She said every bride does something stupid. She said you were safe. I don't want to be furniture in rooms like that. The marina smelled like salt and tired victories. Thank you, I said, because there are moments when gratitude is the only respectable verb. Claire nodded without softening. Her mother will come for you, she warned. Brace yourself. Diane ran a cliffside resort 20 minutes up the coast and wore composure the way other people wear SPF. She had the voice of a woman who has never returned a deposit. Grant, Rachel's father, wore a blazer more expensive than my first car and a smile calibrated to pass for kindness at fundraisers. I could already hear their sentences. I walked home with the ocean telling me it had seen worse than us. The house looked normal enough to be insulting. Rachel had left the lamp on in the living room. A magazine fanned open on the coffee table promised 10 secrets to a stunning reception. She came out of the bedroom in one of my sweatshirts and kissed my cheek like a person who still believed in autopilot. Couldn't sleep? She asked. Claire texted, I said, and watched the muscles beneath her smile flinch. She says you left the club with a dancer. The word sounded ridiculous in our kitchen. Rachel blinked, recovered, and slid into her talent for almost plausible. We were being stupid, she said. It was a dare. I went with the girls for room service and a nightcap. Nothing happened. Claire's screenshots said otherwise. The charge was a single room. The timestamps bracketed the night like quotation marks. Why is the room under your name? I asked. Because I'm good with reservations, she said evenly. Because nobody else had their card. There are 100 ways to end a conversation, and only one way to end a lie. I didn't accuse, I didn't forgive. We'll talk tomorrow, I said, when it's not midnight. She looked relieved at the postponement and punished herself with a too bright smile. Tomorrow, she agreed, and disappeared into the bedroom with my sweatshirt and her phone. Sleep is terrible at triage. I lay awake cataloging every party where Rachel had said 5 more minutes and meant an hour, every work event that ran late, every time she'd set her phone face down and called it manners. Grief tried on my body like a suit and decided it fit. Sometime after 2, I drove to the 24-hour grocery and bought coffee I didn't need and a legal pad I did. Morning arrived as if nothing scandalous ever happens to people with reusable shopping bags. Rachel made eggs, I poured coffee. "I shouldn't have lied," she said first, and I braced for the kind of honesty that rearranges furniture but not foundations. "We did go to a room. I had a drink with the performers. I wanted to feel young and wild for a night." She was crying now, the tidy kind of tears that leave mascara unbothered. "I didn't sleep with him." "Which him?" I asked, too gently, and she winced like I'd tapped a bruise. "You don't believe me," she said, and I didn't answer because that was the answer. She reached across the counter, palm up, as if offering me a way back. "Can we just move forward?" It was stupid. It means nothing. We're 3 weeks out. If you're listening to this and feeling a pang in your heart, don't leave. At the end of this, let me give you some honest advice. If you were me, would you stay quiet and get married? Or would you hold off to protect yourself? Like, subscribe, and leave a line. I'll read it all by midnight when the house finally tells the truth. The awful thing about moving forward is how often it means stepping over something you should bury or name. I took the legal pad from my bag and wrote 2 columns, facts and feelings. Facts, screenshots, a hotel charge, a timestamp, a caption, a contact named A. Feelings, nausea, shaking hands, the realization that love has terrible aim. "I need your phone," I said softly. "Absolutely not," she said, and then seemed to hear herself. She unlocked it and slid it over like a person surrendering a passport. No messages from A, no traces. She was either smarter than I hoped or dumber than I feared. But the hotel app showed the reservation, her thumbprint, her initials. When you're building software, you learn to follow logs, not stories. I called the hotel and introduced myself as the groom trying to reconcile wedding receipts. My apologies. Could they confirm whether the room had a second key issued? They could not, of course, but a manager implied what policies don't say. "Only 1 key was picked up, sir," she said, and then after a pause that sounded like conscience, added, "by your fiancé." I met Claire again that afternoon. We sat in her car with the windows cracked and the dashboard pretending to be shade. She scrolled through group chats and showed me the digital confetti. "They thought it was hilarious," she said. "Except me." I asked her for copies and she sent them like a person uploading a burden. Before I left, I asked the question I had tried not to. "Did you ever... with me? I mean, did you tell me because... I'm not your consolation prize," she said, sharp but not cruel. "I'm a witness. I'm also your best chance of not spending the next decade gaslit into thinking you're overreacting." Rachel loved being adored. She's always treated attention like a savings account. By evening, Diane called. Rachel must have told her a version that kept the nouns tidy. "Daniel," Diane said, in that customer service purr she has cultivated into a weapon, "weddings are pressure cookers. Girls make mistakes at bachelorettes all the time. Strong men know how to lead through turbulence. I don't want to lead anyone into denial," I said. "I want to be married to someone who doesn't call betrayal a souvenir." Diane dropped the sugar. "Then you need to remember what you owe," she snapped. "We've paid deposits, booked rooms, invited donors. If you humiliate our family, we will recoup every cost. I will not have my daughter abandoned because a groom can't handle adult realities." "Adult realities," I repeated, tasting the phrase like a pharmacist tastes poison. "I won't be bullied into a vow I can't trust." She exhaled loudly enough to fog the receiver. "Rachel will call," she said. "Do not make this worse." Rachel did call. She apologized for letting her mother call at all, then explained that her mother speaks harshly when she cares. She floated what she called a balancing proposal. "If it helps you," she said, small, "we can agree that you get one hall pass, one night. Then we're even." Something inside me, already cracked, made a new noise. "Even?" I said. "You want me to go sleep with someone because you couldn't stand the idea of being ordinary for one evening?" She cried again, softer. "I want us to be okay," she said. "I don't want to cancel everything because of one stupid night." Cancel. The word rang in my head like a fire alarm. Weddings cancel. Lives don't. I told her I needed space. She said space sounded like punishment. I packed a bag anyway and moved into the spare room, which is a ridiculous euphemism for a corner of the house where your toothbrush looks like a refugee. I opened a separate bank account and moved my paycheck. I called an attorney whose brain I trust and whose rates I hate and said, "Hypothetically, what would you advise a man who discovers his fiancée cheated on him before the wedding?" "Document," she said. "Don't dramatize. Secure your finances. If they threaten, smile and write it down." People with money love contracts until contracts love the other party. She told me to collect receipts, screenshots, witnesses. "Truth is boring," she said. "Make sure your truth is boring and complete." So I became a clerk in the archive of my own heartbreak. I asked the club for CCTV, and they told me those tapes get overwritten as fast as shame. I tracked the hotel charge to a floor and a wing. I took photographs of Rachel's suitcase lined up by the door after the bachelorette. I found a text in her phone she had missed, buried in a notification summary. "See you again before the vows." I dug into the metadata and found a contact card created and deleted within minutes. I'm good with logs. She's good with costume changes. When you swim in evidence long enough, you forget to come up for air. Claire texted to check if I was eating. She dropped off a casserole like a grandmother cosplaying as a friend. We didn't talk about Rachel. We talked about the weather and a book she loved and how sometimes leaving a thing in the oven is an act of faith. When she stood to go, she said, "Daniel, you don't have to win this. You just have to not lose yourself." 2 days later, Grant arrived in a blazer the color of lawsuits. He didn't ask to come in. He stepped over my threshold like it was a suggestion. "We can do this the easy way," he said, smiling, "or the expensive way." He set a folder on the counter with numbers circled in highlighter. Venue, catering, photographer, flowers, a total that looked like the down payment on a future. "You will reimburse the family," he said, "or you will proceed with the wedding and behave like a man who knows his obligations." "Your daughter slept with someone who was paid to entertain her," I said, keeping my voice in its lane. "That voids more than a deposit." He snorted. "Prove it," he said. I put the screenshots on the counter. He didn't flinch. Pictures of drinks?" he said. I added the hotel charge. He shrugged. "A friend's room." I slid over the caption and the deleted contacts metadata. He stopped shrugging. "If you pursue this," he said softly, "we will consider you the aggressor and act accordingly." "Please do," I said, and took a photograph of him taking the folder back. People with money forget that a camera phone is a contract you sign by entering the frame. He left with a threat disguised as fatherhood. "You're throwing away the best thing that ever happened to you," he said. I closed the door and leaned my forehead against it like a man listening for aftershocks. Rachel knocked 10 minutes later. No eyeliner. Hair in a knot that pretended to be practical. She stood on the porch like a student called to the principal and said, "Can I come in?" I let her. She handed me her phone again, unlocked, and said, "Scour it." I deleted him. I blocked the club. I hate who I was that night. Please don't make me hate all of me forever. It would be easier if betrayal came attached to villains. Rachel is not a villain. She is a person who loved applause too much and attention like oxygen. I told her I needed to understand why. She whispered what sounded like a confession and a complaint at once. I wanted to feel like I could still surprise myself, she said. Everything about this wedding feels expected. You're steady. I wanted a bad idea to make me feel large. Large. It landed like a diagnosis. You could have told me that, I said. We could have built something large, a trip, a memory, a promise that doesn't need hurting to feel big. She nodded, tears returning without mascara's mercy this time. I'm sorry, she said. If you cancel, I'll deserve it. If you stay, I'll try to be someone who doesn't confuse noise with music. I slept on her apology like it might soften overnight. It didn't. My attorney emailed a draft notice of cancellation that sounded like an obituary for an event. I read it twice and felt a pain so clean it could have been expensive. I didn't sign it yet. The petty part of me wanted them to sweat. The decent part of me wanted to warn the vendors before they baked anything. In the morning, Claire texted a single line. I'm with you whatever you choose. It shouldn't have mattered as much as it did. Maybe I had misjudged her sharpness. Maybe it was just a better tool than kindness when you're tired. I drafted a message to the photographer and didn't send it. I made coffee I didn't drink. I wrote code I didn't commit. By afternoon, I was walking the harbor as if the tide had the answer tucked in its sleeve. That's where Diane found me, because of course she did. I raised a daughter to be a force, she said by way of greeting. Forces cause waves. Are you really going to abandon her because you got splashed? Your metaphors need better chaperones, I said. She ignored that. If you humiliate this family, she continued, I will humiliate you in court. You misled us into expenses. You accepted gifts. I raised a hand. Diane, if you sue me, you will not like discovery, I said. You will not like what subpoenas do to secrets you think are housed in conversations. You will not like your daughter on a stand answering under oath who A is. For the first time since I'd met her, Diane's face cracked. Not much. Enough to see the woman under the resort lighting. She is my child, she said. She is my investment, I thought, and did not say. That night, Rachel came over with a small box and a larger courage. She put the ring on the table without theatrics. I should give you this back, she said. Not because I'm surrendering, but because I've been reckless with things that matter. I pushed the box back to her. Keep it until we decide what it means, I said. Right now it's just geography for a finger. We made rules. No late nights. No phones face down. No alcohol at events where bad choices have an open tab. We would try for a week. We would reserve the right to declare the experiment a failure without assigning moral grades. It was a terrible plan, and the only one that let us keep breathing in the same rooms. Halfway through that week, a message arrived from an unknown number with a voice memo attached. I nearly didn't play it. When I did, a man's voice filled the kitchen, casual and cocky, mispronouncing Rachel's name the way men do when they think you will forgive everything if the vowels are confident. Good luck with the wedding, he said, a smirk you could hear. If you ever want that energy again, you know where to find me. I didn't throw the phone. I forwarded the memo to my attorney. I poured 2 glasses of water as if hydration were a strategy. Rachel listened to the clip and pressed a hand to her mouth. I'm going to be sick, she said, and then, I'm going to find him and make him delete it. Please don't, I said. Don't feed it. We stood in the kitchen like statues in a museum of almost. The next morning, Grant emailed me a good faith agreement, drafted by a lawyer who charges by the ounce of intimidation. If I chose to proceed with the wedding, the family would cover an additional set of costs. If I chose to cancel, I would reimburse all deposits within 15 days. There was a clause about defamation that made my skin feel too tight. My attorney replied with a note so clean it shone, "We decline. If you file, we respond, and we counter." In the evenings, I took long drives up the coast to a turnout where the cliffs pretend to be a clean edge to a messy world. I brought the ring box and set it on the dash and practiced not talking to it. I thought about my parents who stayed married because they liked each other more than they liked drama. I thought about the children we might have, and whether I wanted to teach them that forgiveness is a coupon you clip for future use or a currency you spend once with intention. On the 7th day of our terrible plan, we ate takeout on the floor because chairs felt too formal. We did not talk about the wedding. We talked about the moon and a neighbor's dog and a recipe that failed nobly. When I stood to throw away the cartons, Rachel touched my ankle with her toes, a small domestic kindness. "I don't deserve you," she said. "Maybe," I said, "because truth is tender and has no interest in flattering us. But you deserved a chance to be better. I'm deciding whether I deserve the version of myself who can forgive and still look in the mirror. If you've stayed with me this far, thank you. Tell me, would you forgive or would you walk away?" Leave me a comment below. I read them when the house finally falls quiet. And if you want more stories where love and betrayal collide in the ordinary corners of life, hit like, subscribe, and stay with me for part 2. The week after Claire's confession felt like I was walking through a play where everyone else already knew their lines. Rachel cooked dinners like a woman auditioning for a part she wasn't sure she wanted. Her father, Grant, called twice with the tone of a man who bills by the hour. And Diane, always Diane, texted me daily reminders of how much our family had already invested in this wedding, the word family underlined with teeth. I wasn't angry in the way they expected. I wasn't shouting, wasn't slamming doors. I was documenting. Every call, every text, every look that landed wrong. My attorney had told me to keep a ledger, so I did. Dates, times, words that could be turned into evidence. It made me feel less like a groom and more like a stenographer at my own divorce trial. Rachel noticed, of course. She noticed the legal pad always on the table, my laptop open later than usual, the way I asked her to repeat herself if she said anything even remotely definitive. "You don't trust me," she said one night. I didn't pretend. "I'm trying to decide if I can ever again." She cried, then stopped, then sat across from me with an expression that made her look older than 32. "Daniel, if you walk away, my family will ruin you," she whispered. "They've done it to people before." "Then let them try," I said, my voice steadier than my pulse. The first official confrontation came at Diane's resort. She invited me for what she called a civil conversation. Civil conversations in Diane's world happen in her office overlooking the Pacific, the windows large enough to remind you she owns the view. Rachel was there, her hand folded in her lap like a child waiting for a verdict. Grant leaned against the window frame, arms crossed, blazer perfect. Diane poured herself tea and gestured for me to sit. "Daniel," she began, "you're an intelligent young man. You know what's at stake here. A wedding isn't just about two people. It's about families, reputations, businesses. One mistake doesn't erase years of commitment." "One mistake?" I said. Grant cut in. "Claire is exaggerating. She's jealous. Rachel had too much to drink. Don't blow this up into something it isn't." I pulled a folder from my bag and slid it across the desk. Screenshots. Receipts. The cropped selfie captioned, "I needed that." "Tell me again it's not what it looks like," I said. For a moment, Diane's mask slipped. She set down her tea too firmly. Then she recovered. "Fine. It was poor judgment. But marriages survive worse. What matters is discretion." "You can't humiliate Rachel, and you can't humiliate us." I leaned forward. "What about humiliating me?" Diane's eyes hardened. "That's not how this works." Rachel whispered, "Mom, please." But Diane didn't blink. "You will marry my daughter," she said, "and you will build a future that benefits both families. Or you will pay back every cent this family has invested in you. Wedding costs, gifts, accommodations. We have lawyers who will eat you alive." I stood, collected my folder, and met Grant's eyes. "Then let them starve," I said, and walked out with Rachel calling my name behind me. That night, she came to my house alone. Her face was streaked with mascara, her voice raw. I told them to stop. I told them I'd rather lose everything than lose you. "But Daniel, I need you to believe me. I didn't sleep with him. I was stupid, but not that." I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to. But Claire's evidence, the receipts, the cropped photo, the smug voice memo I'd forwarded to my attorney, they didn't leave much oxygen for faith. "Rachel," I said, "this isn't just about whether you crossed a line. It's about the fact you lied when I asked, and then you lied again, and then you offered me a hall pass like that would fix it." She flinched. "I panicked," she whispered. "I can't build a marriage on your panic," I said. She stayed the night on the couch. I listened to her cry herself into silence. In the morning, she was gone, but the ring box was still on the counter where she'd left it days earlier, unopened, daring me to draw a conclusion. Grant escalated next. I came home from work to find him leaning against my front porch railing like he owned the mortgage. He held a manila folder. "This is your last warning," he said. Inside, an itemized spreadsheet of costs, venue deposits, catering contracts, photographer retainers. The total came to nearly $40,000. "You'll reimburse us," he said, "or you'll show up on the wedding day and smile. Otherwise, we'll sue for damages and defamation." I took out my phone and snapped a photo of the folder in his hands. "You just made my case stronger," I said. Grant's smile faltered for the first time. "You don't know who you're up against." "I do," I said. "A family who thinks intimidation is currency." He left with a threat disguised as a promise. I emailed the photo to my attorney before he reached his car. Claire checked on me often. Sometimes she brought food, sometimes just silence. We sat on my porch watching the tide rise and fall like a metronome. "You're calmer than I expected," she said once. "I'm angrier than I've ever been," I answered. "But I'm saving it. Anger's only useful if you know when to spend it." She nodded, respecting that kind of math. 2 weeks before the wedding date, the lawsuit arrived. Filed by Rachel's parents against me. Breach of promise, financial damages, emotional distress. They were suing me for breaking their daughter's heart. My attorney laughed when he read it. "Judges hate cases like this," he said. "But if they want war, we'll give them discovery. We'll subpoena the club, the hotel, the dancer. We'll put Rachel on the stand." I imagined her under oath, forced to answer who A was. I imagined Diane in the gallery, forced to watch her empire shrink under cross-examination. And for the first time since Claire's midnight text, I smiled. When the lawsuit finally reached the courthouse, it felt less like a trial and more like a stage play. The Harringtons, Diane in her pearl armor, Grant in a suit pressed with intimidation, sat at their table with the calm of people who believed money rewrote definitions. Rachel was beside them, pale but still wearing the ring I had stopped looking at. My attorney leaned over to me before opening statements. "Stay calm," she said. "Let them talk themselves into the grave." The Harringtons claimed I had caused emotional devastation, that I had humiliated Rachel by threatening to cancel, that my unstable behavior had cost them money and reputation. They painted me as a coward who couldn't handle the ordinary turbulence of adult relationships. Then came our turn. We laid out the timeline like stones in a river. Claire's testimony, the screenshots, the hotel receipt, the captioned selfie, the smug voice memo. The judge's eyebrows rose at the words "I needed that." The courtroom went quiet when the voice memo played, the dancer's voice, sloppy with arrogance. "Good luck with the wedding. If you ever want that energy again, you know where to find me." Rachel crumbled in her seat, burying her face in her hands. Diane whispered something sharp in her ear, but even from across the room, I could see the cracks forming. Claire took the stand. She didn't gloat, didn't dramatize. She simply told the truth. How Rachel had left with the dancer. How she'd begged her friends to stay silent. How Claire had grown tired of being part of the silence. Her voice didn't shake. If anything, it steadied me. When the cross-examination came, the Harringtons' lawyer tried to frame Claire as jealous, bitter, motivated by some secret crush. Claire looked him dead in the eye and said, "If you think telling the truth about betrayal is jealousy, you've been married to the wrong people." The gallery murmured. The judge rapped his gavel once, but even he looked like he was hiding a smile. The verdict wasn't dramatic. The judge dismissed their claims, called the case an abuse of the court's time, and warned the Harringtons that any further attempts might earn them sanctions. But the real punishment wasn't on paper. It was in the way people whispered as the Harringtons left the courthouse, their reputation cracked like porcelain. Rachel lingered behind, tears running like ink on a page washed too many times. She looked at me, lips trembling as if searching for a script. "Daniel," she whispered, "can we talk?" I wanted to hate her enough to refuse, but hate is heavy, and I was tired of carrying weight that didn't belong to me. I walked past her, leaving her alone with the echo of her choices. Weeks turned into months. The wedding date passed with nothing but a quiet morning and coffee I made for myself. Vendors called, some angry, some sympathetic, and I paid what I owed without complaint. Freedom has its price tag. Rachel spiraled. Rumors spread of shouting matches with her parents, of Diane disowning her in fits of pride. Eventually, I heard she'd been admitted to a clinic downstate, for rest. Rest is a generous word for exile. Claire checked in often, sometimes with food, sometimes just silence. We didn't talk about what she'd done for me until one night on the porch, when the tide was high and the moon made the water look like glass. She said, "You know I didn't do this for you, right?" "I know," I said, "but I'm still grateful." She smiled, a small, tired smile. "Gratitude is enough, for now." The story could end there. Rachel punished, her parents humbled, me free. But endings are rarely clean. Some nights I still hear that dancer's mocking voice, still see Rachel's eyes begging for a future she had already sold. Forgiveness doesn't arrive on a gavel. It takes years, and maybe more courage than revenge ever required. One evening, walking by the marina where Claire had first handed me her phone, I found myself staring at the horizon, thinking of vows never spoken. I realized I wasn't haunted by Rachel anymore. I was haunted by the version of myself who believed love was unbreakable. That version was gone. I had to decide who I wanted to be next. If you've stayed with me to the end, thank you. Tell me, what would you have done in my place? Would you have forgiven Rachel or taken her to court like I did? I read every word you leave behind when the house is still and the night won't sleep. And if you want more stories where betrayal collides with reckoning, hit like, subscribe, and share this with someone who needs a mirror instead of a mask.